Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something absolutely ridiculous. We're going to follow Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, chaos, and probably hangovers on a slow, drowsy journey through grapes, music, and the kind of historical nonsense your 10th grade textbook wouldn't dare mention. Picture this. It's night. Like real night, cicadas are whispering their usual lullabies. Maybe there's a fan humming softly nearby. You're lying down, limbs heavy, and the moon is spilling a lazy silver across the world. Everything's calm, silent, still. And then out of nowhere, vine starts to sing. Yes, a grapevine, singing like it's auditioning for some ancient version of The Voice, except there are no judges, just you, barely awake, blinking at the stars. Honestly, you wouldn't last 5 minutes in ancient Greece, not with Dionysus running around turning pirates into dolphins, making wine out of music, and somehow convincing snakes to join the orchestra. You'd be toast, or cheese, or toasted cheese. Either way, you'd be done. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from, and what time it is over there. I love knowing which corners of the world we're all dreaming in tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wander slowly across stones worn smooth by time. The kind of stones that remember sandals, chariots, and rain from centuries ago. The air smells of moss and something sweet. Vines curl up, ancient walls like they've never needed humans, just moonlight, music, and a little mischief. You crouch beside a grape cluster, deep purple like spilled ink, and as you touch it, there it is. A sound, soft, melodic, like a reed flute forgotten in the woods. Dionysus heard that sound too, long ago, when he was still a child hiding on the forested slopes of Mount Nysa. Not the grapes yet, no, not yet. What he heard was the forest itself. A symphony of owl calls, water drops, wind in ivy, and the shuffling of barefoot followers through the trees. You're there, watching him, a boy god with messy curls and tired eyes. He looks around and sighs. This forest is so boring. If only something here would ferment. So he plays a flute. Not because he's good at it, because he's curious. The notes stumble, wander, repeat. They sound more like a breeze trying to remember a tune than anything intentional. But then, something stirs. Tiny green sprouts twist toward the sound, slowly, like they're stretching after a long nap. A vine creeps from the soil. No planting, no watering, just music and midnight. You close your eyes. You hear the quiet popping of roots, breaking through stone. It's not a song, it's a slow-motion dance of light and leaf. The grapevine grows like it's keeping tempo with the stars. Some might say it was magic, but Dionysus would smirk and say, not magic, just good taste in music. There's a rustle. You hear a snort. Something jingles softly. Pan is watching. The wild god leans against a tree, eyebrows raised, panpipes slung lazily over his shoulder, grapevines that sing. You again, Dionysus. They don't argue with words, they argue with melody. Pan huffs a sharp note on his pipes, bold and unruly. Dionysus answers with a sigh on his lyre, melancholic and slow. The vines shiver between them, leaves clapping gently like they're keeping time. Historians still argue over whether Dionysus actually invented wine or if he was simply the first to make grapes sing. Some old forgotten scrolls describe an ancient kind of wine that didn't ferment, it harmonized, and only those who could hear its melody got drunk. You notice movement in the shadows. Women appear, barefoot, wild-haired, tambourines hanging from their wrists like loose moons. The Maenads, they don't speak. They listen. When Dionysus plays, they sway not to rhythm, but to memory. Wine, you think, is for drinking, but not. Here, it's poured into the dirt so vines can sing. The Maenads aren't intoxicated by alcohol. They're drunk on harmony. You take a step, trying to follow the sound. Your body softens. Not tired, just released. Even after Dionysus leaves, the vine keeps humming, and the birds start mimicking the tune. A new kind of owl appears, one that only sings under moonlight. You lift a grape. It splits in your fingers, not with juice, but with a chime, like a crystal note falling into a well. And suddenly you wonder, if grapes can sing, who taught them the lyrics? Dionysus passes behind you, cloak dragging lazily, toes never quite touching the ground. He whistles once, high and low, like a lullaby, and from the farthest tree, something whistles back, a duet, centuries in the making. The vine twists leaf to leaf, whispering its own sleepy song. You're not sure if you're dreaming, but honestly, does it matter? You exhale. It smells like ripened grapes, damp forest, dusty strings, and maybe a lie or two. You step forward, because the vine is still climbing, and behind its leaves, Olympus glitters in the distance, waiting. You follow the vines as they snake upward, clinging to rocks that shouldn't support life, curling into the clouds like they know where they're going. Up ahead, there's a flicker like starlight trapped in branches, and as you push past the last cluster of ivy and grape leaves, you realize you're no longer in the forest. You're somewhere higher, somewhere the wind hums in strange tones, and clouds drift past like lazy sheep. Olympus. But don't expect grandeur yet. The place is a bit of a mess. There are footprints in the clouds, giant ones, goat ones, and some suspiciously bird-shaped. Wine jugs are scattered across the marble floor, like someone lost a very messy game of bowling. And in the corner, half hidden by mist, there's a harp still playing itself out of tune, like a toddler got hold of the strings. Dionysus is not supposed to be here. You spot him peeking round a pillar, holding a grapevine behind his back, like a naughty schoolboy who snuck in with a boombox. Technically, he's divine, but, let's be honest, the Olympians weren't exactly lining up to invite him to brunch. You trail behind him as he tiptoes past Zeus's thunderbolt cabinet, avoids Hera's collection of very intimidating peacock statues, and quietly unrolls his vine near a sun-drenched staircase. He hums just a note or two and the grapes respond. Leaves unfurl. A tendril reaches out and wraps around the nearest harp, that it strums itself back into tune. And that's when Hera walks in. Cue dramatic thunderclap. You feel the air pull tight like a rubber band. Her gown swirls like storm clouds, and her eyes could freeze boiling nectar. You again, she says, voice like icicles wrapped in velvet, bringing that thing into my halls. Dionysus tries a smile. It's just a plant. It's a problem, she snaps. It hums. Technically, she's right. The vine is now humming in perfect fifths, a little jazzier than you'd expect. From fruit, Hera narrows her gaze. You are not Olympus material. Not born here. Not raised here. A half-mortal with vine breath and flute breath, and too much ... enthusiasm. Dionysus shrugs. What can I say? Grapes like me. He's not wrong. The vine is now looping itself around a statue of Apollo and making it dance, which is not helping. There's a rule up here. Olympians only accept chaos if they create it, otherwise, it's called disrespect. You try to follow Dionysus as he backs away, but the vine has already spread, snaking across banisters, curling around columns, nudging the muses' scrolls off their shelves. Honestly, you hear one of them mutter, "We just finished alphabetizing those." The vine slithers toward Athena's helmet. She bats it away with her spear and glares across the hall. Is that music I hear? From produce. Hephaestus snorts from his forge. Be glad it's not from cheese. Poseidon's trident scrapes the floor. The last time we ignored a singing fruit, Troy burned. That might be historically inaccurate, but you let it slide. The vine keeps playing. Not loudly, no. It's cleverer than that. It plays subtly, like a background hum that sneaks into your ears and makes you sway just a little without noticing. The kind of melody you only realize you've been humming after 3 hours. Even Hestia taps her foot. This is when things get messy. Hera yells for the fates. Zeus yells for silence. Dionysus, ever the opportunist, tiptoes toward the exit, but not before leaving a small potted grapevine behind on the windowsill, just in case. And you, caught in the middle of all this divine drama, realize something. Grapes, when accompanied by music and mischief, are surprisingly persistent. Historians still debate whether Dionysus truly invaded Olympus or simply auditioned for it with an unsolicited vineyard. Some say he charmed his way into immortality. Others insist he was exiled so many times, Olympus got tired of ejecting him and just gave him a room. The truth, probably somewhere between a prank and a performance. You slip out behind Dionysus as the shouting fades, stepping onto a back staircase made of moonlight and leftover ambrosia crumbs. He turns to you and grins, wind tousling his hair. "Well, that went better than last time," he says. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. "Last time, the harp exploded." You both descend in silence, vine trailing behind like a curious pet. Somewhere above, the muses are arguing about chord progressions, and Hera is already organizing a no-grapes committee. But down here, at the edge of the clouds, the music grows soft again. The vine hums lullabies. You find a seat on a marble step and lean back. The stars above blink like sleepy eyes. Dionysus lies beside you, arm behind his head, whistling a tune. Only plants understand. Where to next? You whisper. He doesn't answer. He's already asleep. But the vine answers for him with a gentle tremble that sounds suspiciously like You wake up to a strange kind of rhythm. Not music exactly, more like footsteps. Heavy ones. Bare feet stomping the earth, and not in any kind of polite procession. This is stomping with intention, with mood, like someone's angry at the ground and also kind of enjoying it. You open your eyes, and the sky is a different color. Dusty orange, with a hint of pink, like someone spilled wine into the clouds. The air is dry, fragrant with herbs and smoke. You're somewhere new. Phrygia, land of plateaus and secret cults, where music isn't just entertainment, it's currency. And this morning, it's being traded with great enthusiasm. You see Dionysus, again, barefoot, cloak flying behind him like he's leading a parade he just invented 5 minutes ago. Behind him, a caravan of the strangest band you've ever seen. Maenads with cymbals, satyrs with drums strapped to their bellies, and one goat wearing earrings and a suspiciously smug expression. And they're carrying vines, bundles of vines, coiled in baskets, draped over shoulders, tucked under arms like sacred relics. They march with their weird music into Phrygian villages, and the earth reacts. You feel it, like a subwoofer buried deep in the soil. The vines don't wait to be planted. They slither across courtyards, curl around doorposts, and twine through the beams of old homes. With every drumbeat, a new leaf bursts forth. With every flute trill, a grape appears fat, shimmering, almost pulsing with sound. The locals gather. In silence, these are not people easily impressed. Their gods wear masks, their priests speak in riddles. But Dionysus, he just plops down in the center of the square, pulls out a battered lyre, and plays not perfectly, not beautifully, but honestly. The kind of music that sounds like spilled wine and unsent letters. And the grapes grow. Phrygia had never seen anything like it. Fields once dry as cracked clay, now vibrate with life. The music infuses the soil. One old farmer swears his vines started humming lullabies to his goats at night. You wander through the streets, watching vines twist into patterns that look suspiciously like sheet music. The whole village feels tuned to some hidden key. Even the wells burble in rhythm. A group of elders confront Dionysus. They don't speak, just glare. He looks up, midstrum, and grins. What? Too much syncopation. One elder, tall, draped in wool, with eyebrows like thunderclouds, finally asks, "What do you want from us?" Dionysus shrugs. "Nothing. Just thought your grapes were lonely." You expect anger, a scolding, maybe a goat-based punishment. Instead, the elder sits then another and another, until the whole town is seated in a circle around Dionysus as he plays. Some close their eyes. One begins to hum. A child claps off beat. No one corrects him. A woman offers Dionysus a bowl of something soupy. He sniffs it. "Fennel," he says. She nods. "And maybe a bit of wild garlic." He tastes it, winces. Perfect. There's a warmth now. Not from the sun, which is beginning to slip behind the hills, but from the way the air thickens with sound and wine. You see 2 villagers start to dance, not because they want to, but because it would be rude not to. This is where it gets weird. At the edge of the village, a single vine grows upward, faster than the rest, straight into the air like it's trying to reach something. Dionysus notices. He walks toward it, fingers still plucking notes from his lyre. The vine stops mid-air, pauses, then twists into a spiral, a corkscrew of leaves and tendrils and bells. Yes, tiny bells, dangling like ornaments. He touches one. It rings, and suddenly, the air splits open, not physically, but sonically. A wave of harmony so deep it rumbles through your bones. You stagger slightly. So does everyone else. Except the goats. They seem delighted. The villagers gasped. The bells continue ringing on their own. In a pattern, Morse code from the botanical realm. No one speaks for a long time. Then Dionysus turns to you, grinning. "Told you Phrygia was musical." You ask, cautiously, "Was that planned?" He laughs. Nothing I do is planned. A satyr trips over a wine jug in agreement. The night thickens. Torches are lit. The vines glow faintly, like they've absorbed sunlight and decided to give a little back. Dinner is served mostly olives, flatbread, and roasted things you'd rather not identify. But the wine flows endlessly, as if the vines are just leaking joy. You sit beneath a fig tree that's trying very hard to blend in, and you listen to the murmurs, the laughter, the off-key songs, and to the vine bells, still ringing quietly in the distance, like the night itself is keeping tempo. Historians still argue about what really happened in Phrygia. Some claim Dionysus simply introduced new farming methods. Others whisper about sound rituals and talking vines. A few believe the Phrygians invented jazz that night and just forgot to write it down. Whatever the truth is, you feel it in your chest, like your heartbeat's been tuned to a new key, and as you start to drift, you realize the vines are still growing quietly, steadily, like a song you forgot was playing. You're standing on a beach that doesn't trust the sea. The sand is dry and sharp, scattered with broken shells and the occasional God knows what kind of bone. The waves crash in slow motion, lazy and suspicious, as if they're not entirely convinced they want to be here. It's too quiet. The sky is thick with clouds, and the air tastes like a dare. Dionysus is humming again. You spot him standing on the deck of a ship, not a proper ship. Mind you, more like a rotting fishing boat that's trying really hard to be a yacht. The mast is crooked. The sail is patched with someone's old tunic, and the crew, let's just say, you've seen more trustworthy-looking criminals in bedtime stories. They're pirates, obviously, but not the charismatic eye-patch and charm kind. These ones look like they would steal your lunch, deny it, and then sell your fork back to you. Dionysus boards with a smile so casual it could get arrested. "Nice boat," he says, knowing full well it's not. The captain eyes him. "Where to?" "Oh, wherever." Dionysus shrugs. "Just follow the music." And that's when you know something's about to go terribly wrong. You climb on board, sticking close to a coil of rope that might double as a weapon if things go sideways. The boat pushes off, and you begin drifting into the open sea. The pirates are whispering. They think Dionysus is just a rich eccentric. They're planning to rob him, probably toss him overboard after. You can hear it in their voices, the kind of greedy confidence that always ends with something catching fire. The sun slips lower. The sky goes from silver to bruised purple. And then the music starts. It's faint, like wind brushing through wind chimes. You glance around, expecting to see a musician, but the sound's coming from beneath the deck. No, lower than that. The sea itself is singing. Dionysus stands at the bow, arms wide, eyes half closed like he's listening to a joke only the waves understand. You feel the boat creak, not from weight, but from rhythm, like it's moving with the song now, not through it. One of the pirates starts to sweat. Another checks his compass, which spins in a slow, confused circle. "Why is it getting warmer?" someone mutters. You notice it too. The sea is steaming just slightly, bubbles rising like champagne in a god-sized glass. Then the vines appear. At first it's just one floating on the surface like driftwood, then another, then dozens, coiling and twisting, reaching out of the water like fingers eager to dance. One pirate screams. Another drops his sword into the ocean, which promptly turns it into a flute. Dionysus smiles. "You've seen this look before. This is going to be fun for me, not for you. Look." The vines begin crawling up the hull, slow at first, polite even, but then they accelerate, slithering across the wood like snakes with a beat to catch. They loop around the mast, not through the rigging, and wrap gently around the feet of every single crew member. And then they lift. The boat is no longer floating, it's suspended, held aloft by singing vines and a melody that feels like a drunken lullaby. The pirates freeze. "Drop him," the captain yells. "Throw the madman overboard." Bad idea. The moment they lunge at Dionysus, he snaps his fingers. The vines tighten just a little, enough to make every pirate float an inch off the deck. Legs dangling like marionettes, they wiggle, they yell. It's not very dignified. And then the transformation begins. It starts with their eyes turning glossy and round. Their arms shrink. Their clothes fall in sloppy heaps. Their yells become clicks. And before you know it, dolphins, not majestic ones either. Awkward, indignant dolphins flopping in confusion before diving into the sea. One of them lets out a pitiful squeak, which, if you listen closely, sounds like, seriously. Dionysus dusts off his robe. Told them not to touch the vines. You're still clinging to the rope. Barely. The boat begins to lower. The vines relax their grip, setting the vessel gently back onto the waves. It rocks with a tired sigh, like a horse that's seen too many weird things today. And just like that, silence. Except not really. There's a soft strumming in the distance. You look over the side. A school of dolphins is swimming in perfect rhythm, tails flicking in sync, creating a melody that echoes faintly across the water. Their eyes still look mildly annoyed. You and Dionysus sit at the edge of the boat, legs dangling, watching them vanish into the dusk. So, you say, you always turn pirates into dolphins. He stretches, yawns. Only the rude ones. Historians still argue about the boat incident. Some claim it was allegory. Others think it was punishment from Poseidon, not Dionysus. A few suggest the dolphins are still out there, occasionally trying to mug smaller fish. But you were there. You felt the vines. Heard the sea sing. Watched grapes bloom mid-air as the stars come out and the water smooths like satin. The boat drifts gently toward the horizon. Dionysus lies back, using a wine jug as a pillow. The sky hums, and beneath it, the vines curl softly around the deck, still growing, still singing, still watching. The shore greets you with a kind of dusty indifference. Gone is the sea's mysterious shimmer. Gone are the vines that once hummed lullabies into the rigging. Now it's flat land, wind-worn and reddish-brown, with scattered stones that crunch beneath your feet like overbaked bread crust. You've arrived in Phrygia's highlands, but further inland now. Less wine-soaked, more wind-whipped, fewer singing grapes, more goats with judgmental eyes. Dionysus walks ahead of you, trailing his fingers along the tall grass, humming something under his breath that sounds halfway between a drinking song and a funeral dirge. His entourage has changed. No pirates, no maenads, no smug goats in earrings. Just him, and the drums. You hear them before you see them. Boom, boom, boom. Deep, steady, impossibly far off, like someone's knocking on the underside of the world. They're early. Dionysus mutters. You ask who. He doesn't answer. Instead, he whispers, and lo. And out of the hills come the Phrygian drum priests. Tall, hooded, feet bare. Each one carries a drum the size of a small bathtub, strapped to their chest with rough leather. They don't speak, just walk in rhythm, boots of dust and silence. Their faces are painted in spirals and sunbursts, and their arms are inked with vines, literal vines, tattooed into the skin like they've accepted the plants as part of their bloodstream. They surround Dionysus like old friends, or conspirators. The leader, an older man with an eye like a cracked pearl, nods once. The earth is listening again. He says, you don't know what that means. Dionysus, however, does. He takes off his cloak and lays it across a flat rock. Then he pulls out a single seed, small, wrinkled, looks more like a grain of sand than the key to anything. He hands it to the old drummer. The man places the seed in a shallow groove in the earth, then steps back. The other drummers tighten their straps. You hear a soft hiss as leather meets skin. And then the beat begins. Boom, dash, thud, dash, boom, dash, thud. Not just noise, not chaos. This is structured, mathematical, like they're reciting equations with percussion. You feel it in your chest first. A gentle thrum, like your heartbeat just got hijacked. Then the ground begins to hum. Not shake, not rumble, just hum, as if the soil is trying to remember a song from 1,000 years ago. Dionysus kneels beside the groove. He begins to sing. It's not beautiful. In fact, it sounds like someone tuned his voice with a spoon and a goat. But it works because the land listens to honesty, not talent. And suddenly, movement. From the groove, a green tendril curls up, spirals, splits, doubles. The seed becomes a vine. The vine becomes a bush. The bush explodes into grapes, small, golden, and shimmering with a strange sort of dust. You lean in, expecting a scent. Instead, you hear it. The grapes are singing. Not words, not melody, just tone. A pure ringing note, like someone struck a glass with perfect timing. One of the drummers falters, his hands twitch. The beat skips for a half-second, and the entire field flinches. The vine freezes mid-growth. The song hiccups. Dionysus shoots a glare at the drummer. The beat resumes. The vine sighs and stretches another inch. You don't know how long it lasts. Could be minutes, could be a lifetime. But when it ends, the seed has become a full-blown vineyard. Grapes hang heavy, the air is rich with potential, and something that smells faintly of copper and rain. Dionysus stands, breathing heavily. New technique, he says. Uses drum resonance instead of string vibrations. Took me 3 centuries to figure out. Ask why, go through all the trouble. He wipes his brow. Because sometimes the vines don't want to grow where it's easy. Sometimes they demand effort. You don't know if he's talking about plants anymore. The drummers begin to leave, disappearing over the hills without a word. You want to ask questions, but the moment's passed. Later, at sunset, you and Dionysus sit on a boulder and sip from a fresh wineskin. The drink is warm, sharp, and slightly bitter-like. It hasn't made up its mind about you yet. He offers you a grape. You pop it into your mouth and hear a ping inside your skull. Not a hallucination, a real note. Like a bell rung from somewhere behind your thoughts. You freeze. He grins. Told you. These ones echo. Historians, of course, have no clue about this. They write about Dionysus as a wanderer, a foreign god, a festival mascot with questionable ethics and great hair. But they never write about the resonant vineyard, or the drum-grown vines, or the grapes that could harmonize with your thoughts. That part's too weird, too real. To felt. The stars begin to appear, one by one, like shy dancers waiting for their cue. You lie back on the boulder, wine warm in your chest, a note still pinging gently behind your ears. Somewhere beneath the soil, the vines are still singing, not loudly, just enough, like a promise. You wake up under a tree that wasn't there last night. Its leaves are wide and leathery, shaped like little lyres. Each one buzzes softly, like bees napping in harmony. The sun hasn't quite risen, yet just a pale smear on the edge of the sky, and everything smells faintly of smoke, dirt, and gold. There's a rustling beside you. Dionysus is already up, brushing leaves off his tunic with one hand and holding a bottle of something dangerous in the other. Today's going to be awkward, he says, grinning. We're visiting Midas. You sit up slowly. Midas, the king, whose touch turned everything into gold. Bread, wine, chairs, relatives. A man so disastrously granted that even his hugs became hazards. You've heard the story a dozen ways. Tragedy, cautionary tale, investment advice, but none of them included Dionysus. Until now. You follow him down a winding trail that smells increasingly expensive. The forest changes as you go. First the leaves shimmer with dew, then they shimmer without dew. Then you realize they're shimmering, because they're gold. Branches sparkle, pebbles gleam. Even the bird song sounds like a cash register. At the edge of a glittering clearing stands a throne that probably used to be a boulder until Midas touched it. On it sits a man who looks absolutely miserable in the fanciest way possible. Golden sandals, golden robe, golden eyebrows, and a golden fig, still stuck to his golden beard from breakfast. Midas, Dionysus says, with a lazy bow, still wealthy and wretched. I see. Dionysus, Midas replies, voice like 2 coins clinking in a well. Come to gloat, came to collect. Midas groans. You suspect it's not the first time they've had this conversation. You sit off to the side, on a bench that is thank the gods still wood. Dionysus explains that once upon a very hazy party, Midas had done him a vague, half-intentional favor, probably involved opening a wine jug or kicking a particularly rude satyr, and in his gratitude or post-wine delirium, Dionysus had offered the king a gift. Anything I wanted, Midas mutters. And you picked that, Dionysus says, gesturing at the blindingly gilded landscape. Midas sighs. It seemed practical. To be fair, it probably did. You watch as he tries to sip from a golden goblet. The wine inside has already turned to a kind of metallic jelly. He glares at it like it betrayed him personally. Dionysus, being Dionysus, reaches into his satchel and pulls out a small wineskin wrapped in ivy. Here, he says, tossing it to the king. Drink. Midas hesitates. Will it? No, I brewed it in a fig leaf and sang to it for 3 nights. It resists gold. He takes a sip. His shoulders sag. The fig falls from his beard. And now, the real conversation begins. Midas begs Dionysus to undo the curse. Dionysus smirks, stretches, says something cryptic about consequences and character arcs. But eventually he relents. There's a spring, he says, near Mount Temulus. Bathe in it. Wash away your mistake. And that's it. Midas asks. Dionysus grins. Well, maybe hum a little tune while you do it. The water likes music. You and Midas leave together. It's a short journey, and incredibly awkward. Midas keeps tripping over gold roots. You keep narrowly avoiding turning into a sculpture. Finally, you reach the spring. It's quiet here. The air is thick with mist and the sound of distant flutes. You suspect the vines are watching, but respectfully, Midas strips down modestly behind a golden shrub and steps into the water. At first, nothing happens. Then you hear it, a low hum from beneath the surface, like the earth itself is tuning. A cello. The gold on Midas begins to ripple, not melt, ripple like it's unsure whether it still belongs. It sloughs off in waves, dissolving into glitter that vanishes before it touches the ground. He gasps. You smile. He begins to laugh, not the maniacal, kingdom-owning kind. The relieved, slightly damp, very tired kind. Thank you, he says. Over and over, you return to the clearing to find Dionysus asleep under a tree, using a scroll of tax codes as a pillow. You wake him. Well, he asks. He's cured. Dionysus yawns. Good. Now maybe he can hug someone without turning them into a centerpiece. You both laugh. Then Dionysus pauses. Of course, he is going to miss his golden toilet. Historians still debate the story of Midas. Some say it was metaphor. Others claim the gold touch was just an allergy to joy. But they never mention Dionysus, never mention the wineskin, or the humming spring, or the way Midas cried like a child. The first time he touched a tree that didn't turn to treasure. That part was too human. You and Dionysus walk back through the forest, which now smells like pine, not profit. The golden leaves fall gently, quietly, almost sheepishly. By the time you return to camp, the wine is warm, the fire's lit, and Midas is long gone off to rediscover what bread is supposed to feel like. You lie down, the leaves whisper overhead, and somewhere, faintly, a grape begins to sing again. It's night again, but this time, the dark isn't quiet. It's loud, loud with laughter, footsteps, tambourines, flutes, hiccups, and at least one goat trying to sing. You're in the middle of a field that should belong to some poor shepherd, but has instead been turned into a massive open-air tavern that stretches from horizon to horizon. The moon is high, but its not lawn torches flicker like stars caught in celebration, and the air smells like roasted figs, sweat, and something dangerously close to cinnamon. Dionysus throws his arms wide and declares, "Let the feast begin," and then it does. No trumpet, no speech, just chaos. People flood in from every direction, women with ivy in their hair, men with flowers behind their ears, satyrs cartwheeling while balancing plates of olives, a baby chewing on a drumstick that might not be food. No one's asking questions. Everyone's already dancing. This, Dionysus tells you, is the longest feast in history. 90 days, non-stop, no breaks, no bedtime. The wine will not run out. The music will not repeat. The bread will mysteriously reheat itself every few hours. It sounds exhausting, and yet, you're smiling. You sit down at a table made of fallen oak, your bench carved by time and bad decisions. In front of you, bowls of honey, pyramids of grapes, pickled things that blink at you, and a goblet that refills itself whenever you glance away. Across from you, a woman is teaching a goose how to clap. To your left, someone's reciting love, poetry to a loaf of bread. To your right, Dionysus is wrestling a satyr for control of the cheese platter and losing spectacularly. You ask him why he's doing this. He shrugs. Sometimes joy is the rebellion. And with that, he toasts the moon. The first night is a blur. The second night gets stranger by the third. You stop measuring time in hours and start measuring it in songs. There's one singer who only performs when someone spills wine, a flute player who only plays backward, a group of dancers who twirl so fast you suspect they're generating weather. And then there are the spirits, not ghosts, not exactly, just people who don't cast shadows. Some look ancient, others look freshly dead, but all of them are eating, drinking, and telling stories like they never left the party in the first place. You ask Dionysus who they are. Guests, he says, from previous lifetimes. That should freak you out, but it don't. Instead, you find yourself talking to a soldier who once rode with Alexander, a baker who lived through a flood, and a woman who invented a word that no longer exists. They tell you stories, you tell them yours. You forget who's alive and who's legend. Somewhere around day 34, a philosopher shows up. He wears a tunic that smells like burnt parchment and carries a scroll so long it drags behind him like a regret. He sits beside you and begins explaining, in great detail, why joy is an illusion and wine is a distraction. Dionysus listens for a while, then gently replaces the philosopher's goblet with a lyre. The philosopher frowns, the lyre hums, and slowly, gently, the philosopher begins to play. By day 50, time starts doing strange things. You see people enter the feast looking 20 and leave looking 10 years younger. A man who forgot his name regains it after drinking from a bowl of pomegranate wine. A child speaks in riddles that only the moon seems to understand. The vines never stop growing. They creep through the tents, across the tables, up into the torches. They curl into people's hair and slip into empty goblets. No one minds. The vines are family now. The wine, still flowing. The music, somehow louder. And yet there's no fatigue, no hangovers, just rhythm. Historians still write about the great Dionysian festival, though no one agrees on where it happened or when. Some claim it lasted a weekend, others say a month. A few whisper that it's still happening, in some hidden corner of the world where time forgot its watch. What they don't mention is the way your heart felt lighter every time someone laughed, the way the vines sang when you sang with them, or the way Dionysus sometimes sat perfectly still in the center of it all, eyes closed, as if the entire celebration was just a lullaby for the planet. By day 89 the crowd starts to slow, not tired, just full of songs, of stories, of whatever it is that wine and firelight feed in a person's soul. Dionysus stands, the music hushes, even the goose stops clapping. He lifts a cup, simple, wooden, not even enchanted, and says, "To joy." The crowd echoes, "To joy," and for one brief moment, the world feels still, whole, singing. Then, naturally, someone falls into a soup pot, and the laughter returns. You find a patch of grass, curl up in a blanket that smells like rosemary and smoke, and drift off as the 90-day feast fades behind your eyes. The last thing you hear, a vine humming beside you, just softly enough to keep the dream sweet. You wake to the sound of a hiss, not an angry hiss, more like a sigh through teeth, or wind through reeds, or a snake clearing its throat politely. And sure enough, there's a snake, a small, golden one, curled around a cluster of grapes that somehow made its way onto your pillow. It flicks its tongue in your direction, nods, you think, then slithers off into the underbrush, humming something suspiciously close to a lullaby. You sit up slowly. The feast is gone. The tables have vanished. The musicians are sleeping, or missing, or reincarnated as vines. Dionysus is walking barefoot across the dewy grass, wearing a tunic that somehow smells of both rain and cinnamon. He waves, ready for a quieter day. He says, "You nod," hoping he actually means it. Spoiler, he doesn, single quotes. Today, you're headed deep into a cave that breathes. You don't know its name. No one does. Dionysus only calls it the Hollow One, which is comforting. The entrance is wide and mossy. Inside, the air thickens, not in a bad way, more like breathing through a woolen curtain. You hear dripping water, shifting stones, and beneath all that a melody, low, sharp, fluttering like bird wings made of sound. You reach a bend and freeze. Dozens of snakes, coiled on rocks, dangling from the ceiling, slithering across the walls, all humming, all swaying, all completely, terrifyingly chill. Dionysus raises a hand, and every single snake stops. He whistles, and one by one they begin to play. Not instruments exactly. Their bodies become the instruments. One slithers through a cracked lyre and makes it sing. Another curls around a flute abandoned in the rocks and hisses a perfect note through its own throat. It's not a concert. It's a seance. The melody wraps around the stalactites and drips down the walls. Your heartbeat slows to match its rhythm. Your skin feels softer, your limbs looser. This, Dionysus whispers, is how he learned to speak to the vines in darkness. When light is gone, he says, music becomes language. You sit on a warm rock. A snake curls around your ankle like a bracelet. You pretend not to notice. In the center of the cave, Dionysus plants a single grape, not a seed. A grape, whole, ripe, slightly glowing. He hums. The snakes join in, forming harmonies that loop around the cave's natural acoustics, like a sound tapestry. The grape trembles, swells, bursts, not with juice, but with roots. They unfurl downward into the rock, up into the ceiling. Vines blossom where there should only be stone. No sunlight, no soil. No soil. Just song. You watch the roots, drink the sound itself. Each note disappears into the vine like nourishment. I used to think grapes needed sun, Dionysus says, but sometimes they just need to feel heard. Historians, of course, ignore this part. They write about vineyards on hillsides, about fermentation and barrels and trade routes, but they never mention the cave vines or the fact that for a brief moment in a certain part of the world, snakes formed the most loyal orchestra known to history. You lean back against the rock and close your eyes. The melody swells. You don't understand the words, if there even are words, but it feels like a lullaby from before humans had mouths. One snake brushes against your arm. It smells like rosemary and warm stone. You decide not to flinch. Outside, the world forgets you for a while. Inside, the vines grow slowly in the silence. You begin to hum, not for the vines, not even for Dionysus, just for yourself. Because in this cave, this hollow place where snakes sing and grapes bloom in the dark, your voice finally sounds like it belongs. It's cold now, not a shiver and get a jacket cold. A what, are, we, doing, here, who, thought, this, was, a, good, idea kind of cold. You're high, up higher than you've ever been. The air is sharp, crisp, and so thin it feels like you're breathing icicles. The ground crunches under your feet like frozen parchment, and even the sky looks brittle. Dionysus strolls ahead in a sleeveless robe, like it's the middle of summer. Naturally, you trudge after him through a mountain pass, the wind slicing across your face like an angry harpist. Snowflakes whirl sideways. Somewhere nearby, a wolf howls, and the echo sounds suspiciously like it's laughing at you. Welcome to the Hemus Mountains, a place where nothing grows, nothing sings, and definitely nothing should be attempting to plant grapes. But that's exactly what Dionysus is here to do. He turns to you with a grin, half buried under a frost-covered beard. Just a little experiment, he says. You raise an eyebrow. Your toes are numb, your lips are blue, and he wants to try reach a plateau, a barren, wind-battered slab of rock with snow piled like frosting around the edges. Dionysus stands in the center and claps once. The sound gets swallowed by the wind. Twice still. Nothing. Then he takes a deep breath and sings. It's not his usual wild revel song or snake cave harmony. This one's different. Bare, slow, like a bedtime story told to a sleeping mountain. You barely hear it, but the snow does. It trembles. A single vine thin, as a thread emerges from beneath a crack in the rock. You blink. It shivers in the wind, wobbles, almost breaks, but somehow holds on. Dionysus keeps singing. The wind calms, just slightly, enough for the vine to crawl forward an inch. Then another. A leaf unfurls, pale, translucent, fragile as glass, and yet it lives. You sit beside it, suddenly protective. You want to warm it with your breath, shield it with your coat. Dionysus kneels and whispers something you can't hear. The vine answers, not with a song, but with steam. It exhales. You both jump back as a mist rises from its leaves, curling into the air like incense. And within that mist, faint notes shimmer, tiny chimes, like icicles being struck by moonlight. The mountain watches. You swear it does. You feel the eyes in the snowdrifts, in the cracks of the stone, in the way the cold tilts its head and listens. This one sings in frost. Dionysus murmurs. Took me centuries to find the right pitch. You ask how it's possible. He shrugs. Some grapes are born of fire, others of silence. This one, of stubbornness. You believe him, because the vine doesn't stop growing. Slowly, impossibly, it spreads, clinging to stone, threading through snow, humming in its frost-born dialect. It doesn't want to be a vineyard. It just wants to exist. You sit for a while, minutes, hours, maybe days. Time stretches thin in places like this. Eventually, a snow hare wanders by. It pauses near the vine, sniffs, and curls up beside it like it's the warmest spot on the mountain. The steam embraces it like a lullaby. Even the wind seems gentler now. Historians, they skip this part. They talk about Dionysus bringing wine to Thrace, maybe mention a snowy temple or two. But they never describe the Hemus frost vine. They never write down the notes of the icy lullaby that only grows above the clouds. Too inconvenient. Too unbelievable. Too cold. But you were there. You saw the vine that sang in winter. You heard the mountain hum. And as you wrap yourself tighter in your cloak, head leaning against Dionysus's shoulder, you realize something. It's not just that grapes can grow in the cold. It's that some songs are only born in the quietest, hardest places. The ones that feel like they'll never warm. The ones that bloom anyway. You're on your back, in the middle of nowhere, with your ear pressed to a rock. And the rock is singing. It's not loud. It doesn't belt. No diva behavior. Just a low, constant hum, like a cat purring in geological time. You can't quite tell if it's melody or memory, but either way it's warm. The sun is high. The humus snow is a memory. The frost vine is still humming somewhere behind you. But now you're in a valley, half forgotten by maps, and mostly ignored by time. The air smells of dust, baked figs, and something older than civilization. Dionysus is lying beside you, legs crossed at the ankles, chewing on a sprig of something green that's probably mildly hallucinogenic. He taps the rock. You hear that. He says, "You nod. That's history." He grins. Old vibes, really old, before cities, before myth, before even me. You raise an eyebrow. "Okay," he admits, "slightly before me." The rock beneath you rumbles slightly, like it's laughing, and then it speaks, not in words. It vibrates in phrases, pulses of tone that rise and fall like breath. The stone has a rhythm, a pattern. And the strangest part is you begin to understand it, sort of. It's like remembering a language you never learned. The rock tells stories, not about kings or wars or gods, but about roots, about seeds carried on the wind, about vines wrapping around bone, about grapes growing in places where no one thought they could. You close your eyes and listen. In the story, Dionysus is young, not yet a god, not yet a name, just a boy in a forest with a satchel, full of fruit and a ridiculous amount of optimism. He meets a girl. She doesn't have a name either. She's carved from quiet, hair like dusk, eyes that don't blink. She teaches him to listen, not to people, to ground, to ground. She places his hand on a rock like this one, and together they hear the music of things not yet born. He falls in love, naturally, but she's not mortal, not divine either, something in between. She belongs to the earth the way vines belong to trellises, beautiful for a time, then gone. He leaves her a vineyard. She leaves him the ability to hear stone. You open your eyes. The rock beneath you is still humming. Dionysus is staring at the sky, unusually quiet. "Do you miss her?" you ask. He doesn't answer for a while. Then, "She was never really here." But yeah, a breeze passes, not a loud one, not the kind that makes leaves dance, just enough to stir the vines around the edge of the valley. You didn't notice them before. They're low, curled tightly against the ground, like cats in sunlight. But they move when the rock hums, tiny rustles, gentle trembles, notes rising from the earth, through leaf and stem. And then, clear as crystal, you hear it, a song, not from Dionysus, not from you, from the valley itself, a harmony built on time and dust, and everything buried long ago. The vines grow, right in front of you. They stretch, not fast, not dramatic, just confidently, purposefully, like they know they've waited long enough. The leaves shimmer, grapes appear, tiny, black, glossy like onyx. You reach out to touch one, and it vibrates, a single, perfect pitch that rings through your fingertips into your bones. You pull back, stunned. They don't like to be picked, Dionysus says softly. These ones, they just want to be remembered. You lie back down, place your ear on the rock again. The hum continues. You feel your heart slowing, your thoughts thinning, your body becoming just one more thing the valley might grow over someday. Historians never write about this, about valleys that sing, or grapes that grow from memory. They want wars and treaties and architecture. They want drama. They never stop to wonder if the land itself is telling stories, waiting patiently for someone to press an ear against it and listen. But you know better now. You know the earth remembers. You know Dionysus was taught once not to shout at the sky but to hum into the soil. The sun sinks, the hum fades, and somewhere in the distance, a single vine curls round a stone and sings a lullaby meant only for the dark. The heat hits you before the light does. Sticky, golden, ancient, like the sun itself has been cooking the land for thousands of years and is now just showing off. Sand shifts under your sandals, reeds whisper. Somewhere, a crocodile size. You're in Egypt now, which means everything is older than you. The dust, the air, the words that haven't been spoken in centuries. They cling to your skin, dry and warm, like secrets left out too long. Dionysus looks completely out of place, and also, somehow, perfectly at home. He's traded his leafy garlands for a linen tunic that would be modest if it weren't see-through. And he's sipping from a goblet shaped like a cat. You don't ask, he leads you past date palms and shallow canals toward a structure half buried in sand. At first, it looks like just another ruin. Then you notice the faint shimmer, the smell of fermented figs, the low thump of something bubbling. A priest greets you. Well, not a real priest. More like a man with too much jewelry and not enough boundaries. He bows to Dionysus with the familiarity of someone who's definitely blacked out at least one of his parties. "Welcome," he says, "to the house of endless cups." Dionysus grins, still leaking wine from the walls. The priest nods solemnly. And from the ceiling, you're not surprised. Inside it's cooler, dark. The walls are carved with scenes you can't fully understand. Half-men, half-lion figures pouring wine into rivers, fish swimming through grapevines, suns rising out of goblets. It's surreal. Also weirdly cozy. In the center of the temple sits a table, stone round, etched with spiral patterns, and on it, a single squat cup, plain clay, slightly chipped. Unimpressive. Dionysus approaches with theatrical reverence. He lifts it, tips it over, nothing comes out. Then he hums a low, lazy note, somewhere between a lullaby and a sigh, and the cup fills itself, not quickly, not with a gush, just gently, like a cloud deciding to rain into a bowl. The wine glows faintly, the color of old garnets and bad decisions. You reach for the cup. The priest stops you. "It only works for gods." Dionysus corrects him. "It only starts with gods." He hands it to you. It's warm, not from heat, but from history. You sip. It tastes like midnight on a boat you shouldn't be on. Like the moment before you kiss someone you absolutely shouldn't. Like a memory someone else dreamed. You blink. You're sitting across from Sobek now. Yes, that Sobek, the crocodile-headed god of the Nile. He's wearing a gold collar and an expression that says he's barely tolerating this meeting. Dionysus bows dramatically. "Sobi, it's been too long." Sobek growls. "You always come when we're trying to be serious." Dionysus grins. "And yet, things always get more interesting." The tension is ancient. Apparently, the gods of Egypt don't love the idea of a Greek party god barging in and making the Nile sing. Something about borders, balance, and not fermenting sacred waters. But Dionysus doesn't argue. Instead, he makes an offer, a wager. He places the cup on the table. "If you can drink it dry," he says to Sobek, "I'll leave Egypt." Quietly, no vines, no flutes, no maenads bathing in the sacred pool. Sobek narrows his eyes. "And if I can't, you let the grapes stay." The room stills. The priest tries to sneak out. You don't blame him. Sobek lifts the cup, drinks, keeps drinking. The liquid never recedes. He pauses, narrows his eyes, drinks again. Still full. The cup hums quietly, like it's laughing. Sobek slams it down. "Trickery." Dionysus shrugs. "Just magic." Sobek glares. Then, grudgingly, smiles. "Fine, but only in the delta, nowhere near the pyramids." "Deal," Dionysus says, and they clasped forearms like old war buddies who've tried to drown each other a few times. Historians never mention this. They write about wine arriving in Egypt via trade, about barrels and ships and deals, but they never mention the bottomless cup, or the argument in the dark temple, or the crocodile god who tried to outdrink the god of hangovers. They also never mention the song the vines sing. Along the Nile now, you hear it later that night, floating from the water's edge. It's not Greek, not Egyptian, something older than either. You lie beside a stone wall, warmed by sun and time. Dionysus snores softly beside you, one arm around the cup, the other around a jug he probably stole. The stars reflect in the Nile, and the water hums, a lullaby in a language only grapes and gods remember. You're in a lecture hall now. Well, not exactly. It feels like a lecture hall, except the walls are lined with vines instead of shelves. And instead of students, there are goats chewing on papyrus. A philosopher is scribbling equations into the dirt with a stick, muttering to himself. and Dionysus is sitting upside down on a stool. Welcome to one of Pythagoras's more regrettable afternoons. Let me get this straight, you whisper. You brought fermented grapes to the inventor of math. Correction, Dionysus says. I brought musical fermented grapes to the inventor of numbers that sing. You glance around. There's a chalkboard. There's a triangle. There's also a bubbling cauldron full of something purple, next to a scroll labeled Wine, Rhythm, and Theories of the Cosmos. You sigh, loudly. Pythagoras, for his part, is pacing in a slow circle, beard twitching with frustration. It's out of tune, he mutters. Again, he stops, picks up a grape, holds it to his ear, listens, then throws it against the wall. I told you, he snaps. They only harmonize in sets of 12. Dionysus snickers. Maybe they're in a jazz phase. You're not sure how this started, but from what you gather, Dionysus decided it would be hilarious to prove that wine can be mathematically musical, that is, that different blends of grape could produce specific tones based on their fermentation intervals. Pythagoras, to no one's surprise, took the idea way too seriously. Now you're watching as he divides a vineyard into geometric plots. Each grapevine tuned to a different note. There's a scale. There's notation. There's even a lyre, modified to accept grapes like piano keys. The goats approve. You sit down beside a vine labeled C# and pluck a grape. It hums. Not just a note, but a vibration. It runs up your arm, across your ribs, settles somewhere behind your eyes. You exhale and a low chord escapes your mouth without permission. Dionysus claps. There it is. You're now officially a chordal human. Pythagoras snorts. Still needs refinement. Then he dumps an entire bushel of grapes into the cauldron. It bubbles, steams, emits a harmony so high-pitched a nearby goat faints. Dionysus, delighted, slaps the table. That's it. That's the one. The philosopher ignores him. He's now drawing a massive circle in the dirt and labeling it the tones of the cosmos. Inside it, he places letters. Outside it, he places flavors. B equals plum. G equals citrus. F equals regret. I will create, he says solemnly, the wine scale. You try to leave. You really do. But Dionysus pulls you back and shoves a wooden ladle into your hand. Stir this and hum in E minor. You do that, the cauldron responds. It shifts, color deepens into something richer, something you can feel in your teeth. You glance at Pythagoras. He's nodding slowly, eyes wide, scribbling so fast the dirt starts smoking. This isn't just music, he whispers. This is geometry in liquid form. Winometry, Dionysus says proudly. Historians completely ignore this chapter, probably because it makes zero sense. But you were there. You watched a philosopher try to tune a vineyard like a harp. You saw a grape vibrate itself into a higher key. You tasted a blend so perfectly balanced it briefly gave you the ability to hear your own heartbeat reciting poetry. You helped invent symphonic wine, don't big deal. Later that night, Pythagoras collapses in a heap beside a bush labeled D minor. Dionysus tucks a scroll under his head like a pillow and pours him one last glass of melancholy Chardonnay. You lie back under the stars. Everything hums. The vines dot the air, even your thoughts. And somewhere, not far away, a goat plays a perfect arpeggio with its hooves against a hollow log. You close your eyes and smile. Wine. Music numbers. Apparently, they all come from the same place. The sandals of Rome squeak louder than you expected. Not in a literal sense, more like an emotional one. Everywhere you look, someone's polishing marble or adjusting a laurel or pretending not to care about politics. The streets are clean, the toga's whiter than white, and the entire city hums with the sound of power rehearsing itself in the mirror. And into this perfectly rehearsed empire strolls Dionysus. With grapes on his sandals. You follow him through the forum. He's not trying to be subtle. There's a flute player behind him playing in a key that doesn't even exist. A woman tossing flower petals into the air that immediately wilt, which somehow makes them cooler, and a donkey wearing a sash that says, "Wine is diplomacy." He's here to talk to Augustus. Yes, that Augustus. First emperor of Rome, finder of marble, loser of sleep, the man who turned a republic into an empire without spilling too much wine on the paperwork. He's waiting in the Palatine Gardens, reclining under a vine trellis that definitely wasn't there yesterday. Dionysus, he says flatly. Orgy, Dionysus replies, grinning, still afraid of dancing. Augustus doesn't flinch. afraid of revolutions that wear perfume. Dionysus tosses him a grape. Then don't sniff this one. The tension could age cheese. You're standing at the edge of history, one of the few times two world shapers met. Not in battle or law, but in a debate so civil, it might actually be illegal. Because Dionysus isn't here to conquer. He's here to negotiate. Rome, he says, spreading his arms wide, has conquered everything but itself. Augustus raises an eyebrow. Discipline is not the enemy of joy. Only when joy behaves. Dionysus replies. A silence, a wind. A leaf lands on Augustus's scroll. He brushes it off like it insulted his ancestors. You sit quietly on a bench of polished stone and watch them talk to forces of nature, each more stubborn than the other. Augustus speaks of order, of legacy, of the Pax Romana. Dionysus counters with freedom, festivals, and fermentation as spiritual awakening. It's absurd, it's poetic, it's deeply uncomfortable. At one point, Augustus unrolls a decree banning all public intoxication. Dionysus immediately rolls out a scroll titled The Divine Rights of Grapes in purple ink and glitter. Augustus doesn't blink. You're making a mockery of statehood. You made a statehood that can't laugh. Dionysus says, softer now. That's worse. And for a second, just a second, you see something shift behind Augustus's eyes. He stands, walks to the edge of the garden, looks out over Rome. I cannot let chaos rule, he says. Then let it dance. Dionysus whispers another silence. A bird chirps awkwardly. Augustus turns back. A compromise. Dionysus perks up. Go on. You may keep your festivals, he says, your processions, your wild nights, and your bad decisions, but only after harvest, and no more than twice a year. Dionysus gasps. You tyrant. 2. Augustus says, holding up fingers. No more. Dionysus huffs. Fine. But I want garlands on statues, and dancers in the streets, and grapes carved into fountains. Augustus nods once. As long as they don't sing. Dionysus winks. Can't promise that. And with that, the deal is struck. Later, you find yourself in a small Roman tavern. The wine is lukewarm. The bread is excellent. There's a bust of Dionysus above the door already, wearing a laurel and a mischievous smile, someone definitely carved overnight. A man plays a lyre in the corner, quietly, under his breath. You lean close and ask what song it is. The old one, he says. The song the vines hum before a festival. Historians remember the Bacchanalia. They write about scandal, about excess, about laws passed to restrain too much happiness. But they forget the meeting in the garden. They forget that Dionysus asked. First, that Rome didn't just absorb him, he persuaded it, not with force, not with bribes, but with the undeniable truth that joy, in the right measure, was a kind of order too. You sipped your wine. It's better than you expected. Somewhere in the distance, a statue hums. Ash, that's the first thing you smell, before the light, before the voices, before the faint tremble beneath your feet. Tits ash, charred fig leaves, burnt sandalwood, smoke curling through memories that don't belong to you. You're standing at the edge of a vineyard that used to be everything. Once, it sang. The vines curled through columns and across rooftops. The grapes glowed under moonlight. People whispered that the wine here could make you remember things that never happened and forget things you wished never did. Now, silence, blackened stalks. Soil, still steaming in places, and in the middle of it all, Dionysus kneels, silent for once, fingers trailing through the soot. He doesn't look angry, he looks tired. You step closer, the air shifts, it feels wrong. Not evil, not cursed, just empty. The kind of empty that comes after too much noise, like a song played so often it burned itself out. He speaks softly. It was never supposed to last forever. You ask what happened. People got greedy. He says, tried to harvest what wasn't ripe, played the music too loud, forgot that even joy has a rhythm. You crouch beside him. The ground is still warm, not angry warm, grieving warm, like a hearth that's just been abandoned. A single vine remains. Somehow. Charred black, leaves crisped to lace, but at its center one cluster of grapes, shriveled, silent, clinging to life, like a memory no one wants to admit they still carry. Dionysus hums. It's not for magic, it's a funeral song. The vine doesn't move, it listens. It's too tired to sing, so he sings for it. You don't understand the words. They are words, but you feel them, in your ribs, in the soles of your feet, in the places sadness hides when you pretend you're fine. He finishes. Silence returns. Then a chime. Tiny, weak, but real. You look down. The grapes, they're glowing, just faintly, like embers, like hope, too stubborn to die completely. Dionysus smiles. Stubborn little things, he murmurs. Good. You help him gently dig round the base. The soil crumbles like burnt parchment, but beneath it the roots are alive, pale, reaching, listening. This one remembers, he says. You sit in the ash with him. The sky above turns a soft red, not from fire this time, from the sun admitting it has to rise, even after tragedy. Birds return. Cautiously. To wait. Dionysus pulls out a flute. It's cracked. A bit of string holds the mouthpiece together. He blows one note. It wobbles. He tries again. Better. Soon. A tune threads into the air. The birds listen. The wind hums, and from beneath the ash, vines begin to stir. Historians, of course, don't tell this part. They talk about cities lost in fire, about festivals banned and vines uprooted. They say Dionysus fled, that his time had ended, but they don't say that he stayed behind, that he sang to the cinders, that he knelt in the ruin and waited for the vines to answer, because some songs don't die. They just fall silent until someone cares enough to sing them again. You stay until twilight. No party this time, no feast. Just two figures in the ash, humming quietly to a vine that should be dead but isn't, and somewhere beneath the soot, a single grape begins to grow. You don't know where you are, not in the panicked, I lost my passport kind of way. This is different, softer, stranger, like you've wandered off the edge of a map you never meant to follow, and instead of monsters, you found quiet. Dionysus is beside you, barefoot, hair loose, fingers trailing through the air like he's trying to remember a tune from long ago. His usual grin is gone, not out of sadness, but out of stillness, a kind of peace that only comes after centuries of movement. This is the last garden. You don't know how you know. You just do. It's hidden somewhere between memory and mist. There's no wind here, no time. The sky doesn't turn colors, it just stays, pale blue, faded gold, as if the sun finally stopped rushing from east to west and decided to take a nap. And the grapes, they're everywhere, not wild anymore, not unruly. They hang in perfect silence from ancient vines that weave like veins across the land. Some are silver, some are green, some glow faintly, pulsing in rhythm with your breath. None of them sing, not out loud. Dionysus kneels beside a cluster, brushes dust from the leaves. They're done, he says. You ask what he means. He smiles faintly. They've learned everything. They came here to learn. The vines don't curl. They don't shimmer. They just exist. Quiet. Content. Like old musicians who've finally put their instruments down and started listening to the silence between the notes. You walk through the garden slowly. Every footstep echoes like a page turning. There are no torches here, no drums, no dancing, only vines, and soil that smells like old rain and lullabies, and the faint feeling that somewhere beneath your feet, thousands of tiny roots are dreaming. Find a bench, marble, smoothed by time and weather that no longer bothers showing up. You sit. Dionysus joins you, not like a god, not like a performer, just a tired friend who's walked a very long way. He hands you a cup. It's empty. You hold it for a moment. Then you realize you're not thirsty, not anymore. And that's when it clicks. This garden isn't for revelry. It's for rest, for everything. The grapes have gathered over lifetimes of laughter and chaos and dancing and storming cities with flutes. It all leads here, a stillness too perfect to ruin with sound. You ask what happens next. Dionysus leans back, arms crossed behind his head. Nothing, he says. Finally, and you understand, this is where the vines sleep. Now, not die, just sleep. Because even wild things need silence. Even music needs pauses. Even gods need to stop humming sometimes and just listen to the world breathe. Historians never find this place. They write about the rise and fall of wine cults, the temples, the riots, the laws passed to quiet the songs, but they don't write about the end of it all. They don't write about the moment Dionysus laid down his lyre and said, "That's enough." You lie back on the bench, close your eyes. The air is warm. The soil hums, but only slightly, like the whole garden is sighing in its sleep, and just as you're about to drift off completely, You hear a Tiphane sound, not a song, not a flute, just breath. From the vines, from the earth, from yourself, a rhythm so soft you could mistake it for silence if you didn't know better by now. You smile and let go. The light softens, the edges of the leaves blur. The world grows hushed. You feel your heartbeat stretch. Your limbs melt into the soil. Your thoughts sway like tired vines. Everything slows. Everything stills. Everything sleeps.